From Arches National Park in Utah to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge in Georgia, America's public lands are our national birthright, a window to the past, habitat for wildlife, natural playgrounds, and our children's heritage. Many Americans are familiar with the National Park Service, the Forest Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service, or at least know the parks, forests, and wildlife refuges under their care. Far fewer Americans know about the U.S. Bureau of Land Management, or BLM. But this agency has responsibility for more of our public land than any other federal agency, more than 260 million acres, mostly in the western U.S. and Alaska. In this sweeping expanse of BLM land, broad basins and high deserts are uplifted and incised, forming a labyrinth of rivers, canyons, mesas, and mountains shaping landscapes of improbable beauty. These are lands that all Americans should know and embrace. The Bureau of Land Management was formed in 1946. BLM territory is what remained after the states, homesteaders, mining companies, and railroads staked their claims, and after the federal government carved out its national parks, forests, and wildlife refuges. BLM land is thus the last of what remains of the Old West. In its early days, the Bureau of Land Management's activities focused on managing resource extraction, such as mining, logging, grazing, and oil and gas drilling. These activities have an important place on the public lands. But so does conservation, and there are wild and undeveloped BLM lands and waters whose fate is still an unanswered question. Tens of millions of acres are at stake, the single greatest inheritance of wild country and hidden treasures remaining to this nation. Many of the most spectacular BLM lands and waters are part of the National Landscape Conservation System. Designated in 2000, the system's 26 million acres includes national monuments, wilderness areas, wild and scenic rivers, and other lands for which conservation is the agency's highest priority. This new system was created to ensure that these stellar areas remain healthy, wild, and open. BLM's conservation system includes places like Utah's Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument, a broad expanse of mesas, cliffs, arid wilderness, and colorful badlands in Utah's spectacular canyon country. Oregon's Steen's Mountain Cooperative Management and Protection Area, a landscape of desert and gorges at 10,000 feet, and home to meadows of alpine wildflowers and bighorn sheep, elk, and pronghorn. California's King Range National Conservation Area, also known as the Lost Coast, a dramatic meeting of land and sea where mountains jut directly out of the surf. These places truly are our hidden American treasures, and they harbor the West's history, culture, wildlife, and wide open spaces. From the campsites of Lewis and Clark along the upper Missouri River to the timeless trade route known as the El Camino Real Trail, the lands and waters of the BLM's conservation system represent some of the last opportunities to explore the historic landscape of the West as they were experienced by the first European explorers and the earlier native cultures. Captain Meriwether Lewis encountered the upper Missouri River breaks as he paddled along the Missouri River in 1805. In his journal he wrote, "The hills and river cliffs which we pass today exhibit a most romantic appearance. It seemed as if those scenes of visionary enchantment would never end. Little has changed along this historic stretch of the upper Missouri River since Lewis and Clark's now famous westward expedition. Today, the landscape, a national monument since 2001, still contains beautiful rock formations, magnificent cliffs, wide-open prairie scenery, and archaeological and historic sites. Its remote location provides solitude as well as a wealth of areas for the hiker, rafter, and hunter. The BLM manages the largest, most diverse, and most scientifically important body of archaeological resources of any federal land agency. Extensive evidence of 13,000 years of human history on BLM lands ranges from prehistoric Native American archaeological sites to pioneer homesteads from the 19th and early 20th centuries. With just 6% of BLM lands surveyed for cultural resources, 263,000 cultural properties have been discovered. Archaeologists estimate that there are likely to be around 4.5 million sites on BLM lands. The significance of and threats to these cultural resources were underscored in 2005, when the National Trust for Historic Preservation listed the entire BLM conservation system as one of the nation's most endangered historic places. Colorado's Canyons of the Ancients National Monument contains the highest density of archaeological sites in the nation. Archaeologists have recorded more than 6,000 sites so far, of an estimated total of 20 to 30,000. In addition to its immense historical value, this 164,000-acre monument also provides habitat for a wide variety of wildlife species.